Hey, Sean Chandler here. As of a week ago, I hit 1,000 subscribers, and with that, I wanted to do a couple Q&A videos. I've got a couple other ideas I'm working on to try and celebrate hitting 1,000 subscribers and have some fun along the way. So with that, this is Q&A number 2. The first one was up just a few days ago, also streamed live. That one was more kind of TV, personal questions, stuff like that, and this one is all about movies. So with that said, I'm going to dive right into the questions that people submitted. Hey, we had a child run in the background. Hey, Game Crew chimed in. There you are. You didn't miss it. You are here. I was hoping you would catch this one. With that said, I'm going to dive right into my first question. The first question comes from Johnnie Torch. He says, is there an obscure franchise film or TV series that you think deserves a reboot? The one that came to mind for that one, I don't know if it's super obscure. That's super obscure, but a little bit less in the mainstream culture, which would be Time Cop, Jean-Claude Van Damme's Time Cop. It's not so much that the movie's like this incredible movie that's mine. It's a very good Jean-Claude Van Damme action movie, but the premise of it, the idea that time travel is invented and they have to start policing time because people are trying to change time for their own benefit, that's a very captivating concept for a film. In which case, there's a lot you can do with that that's not just Jean-Claude Van Damme martial arts vehicle. There's a lot of really smart things you can do while making it an action vehicle. It's exciting, but you can also do a lot of things with it that would work really well. Who Knew 22 asks, what are your thoughts on Die Hard franchise being remade? It's like a soft reboot remake of it, like apparently Bruce Willis is going to be in it. All sorts of things that just sound terrible to me. The last Die Hard movie is one of the worst big franchise action movies ever made. It's abysmal. It is a terrible, terrible movie. In which case, I can't really get. I want Die Hard to be just dead as a franchise because of where they've taken it. That's so bad. Bruce Willis cares so little, and so I want it to die for that reason. But it's dying hard. But I'm not excited about it. It sounds terrible. The sorts of idea, like they proposed it as like it's Die Hard Year One. We're going to learn how John McClane became this tough guy cop, which is a terrible concept for a movie because that's what Die Hard is. That's why Die Hard is a good movie. The idea that you're going to tell us the story of how it became like that forgets the whole point of the movie Die Hard. Hey, Ed McMuffin and everyone else, thanks for joining us. So I hate the idea, and I don't think that Die Hard lends itself well to a remake at all because it's a type of movie that's not really made now. It's 30 years old and it has aged incredibly well. It hasn't. I mean, you can watch it now. You can watch it then. There's not something you would change to make it better. That time would have made better. Like cell phones and the internet are the two things that would make it have a reason to exist. But as a type of movie, you just don't have a lot of movies like that made. And if you make something and you're like, let's make a big Die Hard movie, they would try and go CGI, bigger, all sorts of stuff that's bigger but not necessarily better. So I pretty much Die Hard's one I don't see a reason to do more of it. If the best Die Hard movies being made right now are those ones with Gerard Butler, London Has Fallen and Olympus Has Fallen. If you're gonna, those work for me. Nathan Albers asks, how does your personality type affect what movies you like, if you think it does? So what he's talking about is the Myers-Briggs personality test. You can look it up, 16personalities.com, I think is where it is. And you can take it. It's a free test. It takes about 10 minutes. That's not the actual Myers-Briggs personality test, but it's a test like it. There's 16 different personality types, as that statement would indicate. That's my wife back there secretly making her first appearance in any of my videos ever. You just had your moment to discover that. Where was I at? Where's the question? Oh yeah, so my personality type is an INTP. That means I is introverted versus extroverted. So I'm shy as opposed to really outgoing. I'm an N, which means I'm a big picture thinker. I'm a T, which means I'm a kind of like logic over feelings, and then I'm a P, which means I like things open-ended, so I can change what I like. So how does that affect the way I watch movies? I think the way it affects it is more kind of that big picture. I'm an IN. That N means I'm big picture thinker. So the way I watch movies, I enjoy things that tie into the big picture. So, for example, I really like the MCU because this big picture idea of all these movies tying together and being done so well and having interconnectedness, that's really fascinating to me. That's a very N-type personality thing. And so I think things like that are where it kind of ties in, I think, primarily for me. Also, where other people would tie in is like, so I'm a P, but a J means you like things decided and definitive. And so I kind of like open-ended films that don't necessarily give you the answer you want, that you can kind of brainstorm. Other people hate that. A J personality type, like, no, what happened to the people? I want to know. So things like that are kind of where it ties in the different ways that we enjoy movies. So like I said, I'm an INTP. If you watch this, go to 16personalities.com, take the test, leave it in the comment section. Actually, my personality type makes me very curious and want to know things about people and stuff about them. And so I'd be very interested if you're a regular commenter or someone I watch your videos and stuff, chime in on all of that. I had a question thrown in there. What are my thoughts on the Star Wars special editions versus the originals? For the most part, I don't hate the special editions as much as some people do. I hate the stupid changes. I don't inherently hate the idea of some of the changes. So, like the special effects in the first Star Wars movie had some weaknesses. They're pretty, for their time, incredible, but very dated as compared to Empire and Return of the Jedi, which held up very well. Some of the stuff in A New Hope felt very clunky because they were inventing technology. So that CGI stuff at the end, that didn't bother me. Some of the stuff with Mos Eisley did kind of bother me. The Jabba scene, in theory, the scene doesn't bother me, but what the fact that like Han steps on his tail and he makes a funny face, they had to do that for some of the way some of it worked because he has a tail, and the actor, the Scottish that played Jabba in the scene, does not have a tail. And so they had to add in this thing where Han steps on his tail, and it doesn't work. It's stupid. So things like that didn't work. Han shooting first, of course, doesn't work. The stupid new dance number in Return of the Jedi doesn't work. But all the changes in Empire Strikes Back are for the better. They're not very many. They're very small, but they make the movie better. So I don't inherently hate it. They just didn't really make things all that much better. Nathan Albers also asks, do you think Christopher Nolan will ever make a better movie than The Dark Knight? Two thoughts on that. First off, the question assumes that he hasn't made a movie better than The Dark Knight since The Dark Knight came out, and I would question that. Not definitively, but I would question that. I would say that Inception is a more ambitious film that tries to do something much bigger and grander than what The Dark Knight did, and I think it's a very successful film. You can debate which one's better, but I think Inception is a very incredible piece of cinema. That's number one. Number two is to say, absolutely, I think that at some point in time he will make a movie that is better than The Dark Knight. He's got a lot of time to make it happen. And so certainly he'll probably make something better. I think, he spent the last 10 years doing 3 comic book movies that I think he did that more basically to get the credibility to do whatever he wants to do. So they let him do Inception, incredible film. Interstellar, not as a very ambitious film, not quite as successful as these other ones, but he's got a lot of time to do some really incredible stuff, and I'm sure he'll probably end up with some Oscars and some other stuff because he's a very talented individual. So, and I said also, some people put The Dark Knight on it's on the super duper other level from other movies. I don't do that. I think it's a great movie. I would rank it extremely high. I would rate it very high, but I don't kind of sprinkle magic dust on it. I happen to know how old Nathan Albers is, and so I happen to know where around the time in his life where he would have first watched the movie and why that movie would probably hold a more special place in his heart than it would in my heart. But for me, it's a very good movie. Not necessarily, it was like, oh, I really like this. It's Doggy Bo. You want it back in... But yes, very good movie, but very easy. Something that I think that you can make something better. David O'Sullivan. I actually just recorded a video for his channel 20 minutes ago. As soon as we ended shooting our video, I fired this bad boy up. He asks, are there any films that you didn't love upon viewing but grow to love them over time? The Matrix. The first time I saw The Matrix, I liked it. I didn't love it. But my kind of takeaway was like, that was a lot like Terminator, except with a different twist. It's a lot like this. It's a lot like this. I've been watching a lot of Hong Kong martial arts movies at the time, and John Woo movies at the time, like his actual 80s, early 90s type stuff. And so, when it came out, I was like, oh, this gunfight stuff, this is from Hard Boiled. I've seen it before. All this fighting stuff, this is from, it's the same guy that worked on a bunch of Jet Li movies. I've seen it before. So when I first watched it, I liked it, but didn't love it. And then kind of as I got it on DVD, I was like, this movie, this is really something special. This is not just a ripoff of a bunch of stuff. This is very much kind of like what Tarantino has done in kind of taking a bunch of genres, cramming them into a movie that's its own unique thing, that's a homage to all these different films. That's what The Matrix is, and it's very good at it and very enjoyable. But when it first came out, I did not love it, and so that's one that comes to mind. And then the sequels came out. The second one, I was like, okay, I can see where you're going with this. I'm not quite sure. And then the third one came out, and I was like, no, I didn't like The Matrix for almost like 5, 6, 7, 8 years because the mythology was so crapped on by the two sequels. And then the last few years I've come around and like rewatched the first one a bunch of times and been like, no, this movie is something special. And as a follow-up to that question, we'll see how this ties in. Are there any films, also from David O'Sullivan, are there any films that you loved first time, but liked, or actually real quick, the game crew asked Terminator or Terminator 2. I'd have to go Terminator 2. In the past I've gone with Terminator, but I'd go Terminator 2. It's another really special movie. But I think James Cameron is upper echelon of movie directors. Avatar has screwed his career. In the last 20 years, we've gotten one James Cameron movie, Avatar, and then over the next 10 years, we're only going to get Avatar movies, and that pisses me off because Avatar's my least favorite movie from him. But Terminator 2 is it's just really special something, that the way it's an action movie with heart and a sequel that's better than the original, all sorts of things about it that make it something really unique. David O'Sullivan asks, are there any films you loved the first time but liked progressively less over the years? All of the obvious ones, actually. When I first saw The Matrix Reloaded, going back to what I mentioned before, when I first saw it, I didn't mind it. I liked it. And then the third one came out, and I was like, this sucks. When I first saw Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls, I liked it just fine, and then on rewatching it, I was like, oh man, this has some problems. This is not great. And then the first two prequels, Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace, when I first watched them, I was like, oh yeah, cool Star Wars movies. And then by the time Revenge of the Sith, I figured out these are not so great. And so when I saw Revenge of the Sith in the theater, I didn't like it in the theater. I was like, I laughed out loud when the Vader goes, no! Me and my friends were like, this is hilarious. How is this in a Star Wars movie? Because it's not good. David O'Sullivan asks, have your tastes in films changed over the years or not? Yeah, I mean, they've shifted they've shifted in different directions at different times depending on what I can go see. So in the 90s, when I was a teenager, I'd go see all the blockbusters and, Independence Day, Men in Black, Arnold movies, all that type of big action type stuff. And then in the early zeros, I went mostly to go see... Some kids are crying in the background. I went to go see, indie films. I saw Memento when it was in the theater. And, it only made like $30-40 million in the theaters. And I was an early adopter person, saw it right when it came out. Jon Favreau, his first directorial film was a movie called Made, low budget, $1-2 million. And went to go see that in the theaters. And so I saw a lot of the indie films back then, more so than the bigger stuff. And that's kind of what really interested me. And then when I got married, got an adult job, I wanted to go to the movies to relax. And so once again, went back to big blockbusters. And that's the last 8 years or so. That's more what I went to go see. And then over the last year or so, now that I've been doing YouTube, I just kind of go see everything. And so I enjoy a lot of different movies in different sorts of ways. And it's kind of how it's changed over time. David O'Sullivan finally asked, do you think there have been some films that came out in recent years that, although they weren't received in their time they were released, should be re-examined? Not really. Not the way it was before. And I think primarily that's because the internet gives a voice to everyone. And it gives a voice to opposition. And so movies come out, they don't necessarily do great. They might do critically poorly. They might... not have people go see them. but they're discovered by someone, so the internet buzz surrounding them immediately starts talking about it. So movies that might not do well in the theater will be received, if they're a good movie, the internet will discover it, and people on the internet will talk about it. And movies that are overrated will have immediate backlash on the internet. And so I think some of the stuff where in the past there were movies that came out and it took years to find their audience, some of that stuff I think doesn't happen as much because the internet connects all of us. Right now, people across the world are watching this live stream. And by people all over the world, there's 4 of you watching right now. There's 7 watching a few minutes ago, and a few minutes from now there'll be 10, and then a few minutes after there'll be 2. But there are people all over the world chiming in. I've seen people from other continents chiming in. And we can discover things together and we can talk about it. And so it kind of levels the playing field a lot more now that we have the internet. So it changes the way we discuss movies. Jay Vaters asks, hey, I was wondering what your favorite classic black and white movie. I'd go with the obvious answer, Citizen Kane. It's easy, it's obvious, but it's the one that comes to mind very much so. It's just a great movie that ages well. There's a bunch of stuff in it that you don't realize how innovative, how cool, how incredible it is now, largely because we see it in movies all the time. And so a lot of times when you watch the movie that was the first to do something, when you watch it now, it seems like, we've seen this before. But no one had seen it before when it first happened. And that's when movies start to age really well. And that's the case with Citizen Kane. So that's the one that comes to mind. I'm not a big classics guy, so I don't also have as deep of a knowledge of things, but that's the one that comes to mind. Harry Thomas Pictures asks, do you prefer Pixar or DreamWorks? Pixar. Pixar is a really special studio. They had like 10 years there that was just really something else on a different level of how are you putting out this many quality movies? How are you putting out so many movies that are not traditionally kids movies like a movie where the opening scene is mom and dad are excited to have a bunch of kids, and then the mom dies and a bunch of kids die and one of the kids survives, and that's the setup for a movie. That's not a good setup for a kids movie. That's pretty dark and depressing, and they pull it off. A movie about an old man and his wife dying. That's not a good setup for a kids movie, and they pull it off so great. WALL-E, a movie about a robot picking up trash. Not a great setup for a movie, but all of this just kind of works because they just have really in touch with human emotions and storytelling and kids and humor, and just they were really did something special. And the last, 5, 6, 7 years haven't been quite the same thing, but haven't touched on some of that magic that they had for about 15 years. But it's not like they're super far off track. Sir, Ty Jensen asks, have you seen Hot Fuzz? Yeah, it's great. I don't have too much to say about it. Very cool movie. I enjoyed it. I like action movies, so all the callbacks, references to the action movies that I love works nicely. I like Simon Pegg, so that works nicely. I like Timothy Dalton, and so then seeing him as a villain that gets a spike in his face, that's pretty cool. And going, this Willy hurts. He also asks, are you excited about Baby Driver? Yeah. I can't say I'm like super excited, and it wasn't on my radar, and then I saw, hey, it's coming out. So it's coming out, saw the trailer, like, wow, this looks really cool. So I'm excited for it. I don't want to overhype that. I think Ed McMuffin just asks what my favorite movie genre is. Has that shifted over time? I don't really like picking favorites. I kind of default to action movies with comedies. Back in the late 90s, I was really into stuff from Hong Kong, and if you get really smart, you can track down. I actually have a Jackie Chan webpage that's still on the internet somewhere. I think it might be in the Internet Time Machine only, but so I've got all sorts of interesting things out there that I've done in the past, and you can see my early reviews from the 90s. Those are unbelievably bad. But I really like martial arts movies as well as like John Woo type action movies so stuff like that. That tends to remain somewhat the same. I still like action movies. That type of action movie doesn't get made like it does now, or whether it's the Hong Kong stuff or the Van Damme, Seagal, Die Hard. There's not very many of those. Antoine Fuqua being the guy kind of keeping some of those genres alive. But I don't even like saying that's my favorite though. So, Rich Reviews asks, would you rather see Wayne's World 3 or Austin Powers 4? Austin Powers 4. Another Wayne's World just sounds like a terrible idea. The inherent nature of it, I don't think lends itself to, like, here they are 25 years later. Now Wayne is in his 50s. Like, I hear that and I go, oh goodness, that does not sound good at all. I mean, I think that Dana Carvey might be 60 now. I just talking about that makes me cringe on the inside. It sounds horrible, horrible, horrible. But Austin Powers, the idea of this time traveling guy that's out of time, or doesn't have a place in time, fish out of water comedy. The idea of him being older and still thinking that he can shag everyone is kind of interesting and intriguing. So I could see that one working. Rich Reviews asks, your favorite honest trailer? The two that kind of comes to mind are some would be Twilight. They trashed Twilight. Some of the early stuff just worked really nicely. And then one I really enjoyed was The Dark Knight Rises, because they partnered up with Red Letter Media. And I wasn't really familiar with Red Letter Media at the time. And so then it just cuts away to these two guys trashing the movie, stating like the plot holes, and there's kind of this dumb voice. And I just thought that was hilarious. So those are the two that come to mind. Rich Reviews finally asks, considering that the last James Bond film had Blofeld as the villain, could you see a modern interpretation of more classic Connery villains? Yes, I think it'll eventually happen. I don't think it'll happen in the next movie or two, because Spectre wasn't all that well received. And so I think they'll take a little bit of time before doing that sort of thing. But it's like the taste of the general public shifts. And so, Roger Moore movies were really campy. And then Timothy Dalton's were a little bit more hard-edged, but hard-edged in an 80s kind of way. And then shifts back to a little bit more campy with Pierce Brosnan. And those got real campy towards the end. And then it went really gritty and grounded with Daniel Craig, but then Spectre goes a little bit more in camp, and it just kind of does this swing back and forth, and they weigh the audience, and sometimes people respond really well, and sometimes they don't. And so I'm sure they'll try it again. We'll see more of them eventually. Ed McMuffin asks, what is the worst movie you've ever seen? Tom Cabler asks, what's the worst movie you've ever watched? So two people asking the same question. The one I hate the most is Alien 3. I hate what they did with the plot and the mythology. It's an example of when a sequel screws up the previous movie. The victory, the emotions you feel at Aliens are totally erased and destroyed in the first 5 minutes of Alien 3. So I hate it more than any movie because I love Aliens so much. It's maybe one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time, maybe top 5. And just the relationship between Newt and Ripley, just really something special. Hey, someone in the background there. And just the way they open Alien 3, I hate it. But it's not the worst. It's a very well-made movie that tells a story that I hate, is what that means. Well, I say it's very well-made. Respective to the amount I hate it, it's well-made. And compared to other David Fincher films, not well-made. But compared to crap, it's pretty good. In filmmaking sense, not story sense. But, I mean, from there, I've seen Plan 9 from Outer Space, watched a bunch of Mystery Science Theater 3000, so I've seen those movies, as well as I've just watched some of those movies from time to time, and so it's tough to, there's actual movies that are just absolute garbage, that are just made just incompetently, and you're just kind of listing off, was it Samurai Cop from 25 years ago? It's a horrible movie. You could just kind of list off bad, cheaply made movies, but it's worst is a tough one to come up one for that reason. Someone's telling me that it's constantly buffering. Very sorry about that. I think my internet connection is not the best. I'm not quite sure what's going on. It was really strong when I started, unfortunately. Maybe I'll move locations and see if maybe I'll get a spot in my house with better internet connection. There we go. Let's see if this works better. It might not. Very sorry. Leon Lalad asks, favorite movie aren't great movies, but you just like them as guilty pleasures or nostalgia films. All that stuff I've mentioned before of like Van Damme, Steven Seagal, all that type of stuff. Like Steven Seagal's Hard to Kill. It's not a great movie, but I really like it. Whereas like Under Siege, I would say that's actually a really good movie. Hard to Kill, not so much. A lot of the Van Damme stuff, I can't say these are great movies. They're just very enjoyable for me. There's one that's lesser known called The Perfect Weapon with a guy named Jeff Speakman that I think could have been on that Seagal Van Damme level, but for some reason it didn't work out. I've even read some internet rumors that the movie Speed was written as a vehicle for Jeff Speakman, and then the stuff kind of fell through. I don't know how true that is. It's an interesting theory. Well, who's this? But interesting theory to me. Also, he asks, movies that you find underrated or overrated compared to most critics. This actually ties nicely to a question that someone asked earlier. Overrated, I'll go with La La Land. I mean, I get why people like it. I don't get it be like, best musical in 50 years! I just don't get all of that. I just kind of went, that's a pretty cool movie. Pretentious, self-serving. This is a story that I don't think relates to most people outside of Hollywood. Even some of the morals of it, you gotta pick your career over your love life, and I just see that stuff, and I look at Hollywood and the number of divorces, the number of unhealthy people there, and substance, all kinds of issues in Hollywood, and you watch the movie and it's celebrating kind of this chase your dreams over love, and I just go, this is. So I had some issues with it. I gave it like an 8 out of 10, but everyone else is, this is incredible! I just don't see it. And people kept telling me like, oh yeah, it's a musical, you're going to like this one though. It's like, no, I'm not. I'm going to view it as a good movie that it was worth seeing one time, but I'm not going to, and then I saw it and I was like, okay, I'm not a musical guy, so I'm not going to be into this, and I wasn't. Underrated, I don't know, most of the stuff that gets nerd hate, like just that they treat like punching bags, but it feels like they haven't watched it in a long time. Like people just kind of beat up on Ben Affleck's Daredevil, and rightfully so. There's a lot of things to criticize with the movie, but most of these people haven't watched the movie in years and years and years, and so like I don't think it's a fair. Some of the criticisms they haven't watched it, and they're not putting it in the context of it came out before the MCU, before the Dark Knight movies, and so I think some of it's just kind of silly. What's your favorite Batman?
All of them.
All of them? Oh, that's cool. Do you like the Christopher Nolan ones? Do you like Batman and the Shark? Yeah, the movie from the 60s where he's the bat repellent. He loves that one. I found it. We can actually watch it later. I found it. It's on Netflix now, not Amazon. So we can watch that one. What's the worst movie from your favorite director? Let's go with Avatar. Actually, it's not, because he did that. What did he did? Piranha 2? He did Piranha 2, and so that's actually James Cameron's worst movie. But I haven't seen it. So of the movies that are actual James Cameron movies, Avatar, both because I think it's his weakest film, because it's his least interesting film besides the special effects, and because it's killed his career because he's stopped making movies to make more Avatar movies, and that's driving me bonkers. Oh, you leaving? Movies that surprised you, disappointed you most when you saw them. Revenge of the Sith. We'd kind of been waiting to hear. Actually, back in the 90s at some equivalent of Comic-Con, I actually went to Star Trek conventions, not Comic-Cons, because Comic-Con wasn't quite what it is now. But I went to Star Trek conventions a lot in the 90s. At one of these, they had a treatment written by George Lucas in 1983 that was kind of his story for what happened to Anakin, and has the Mustafar battle in it, and I bought it. And I lost it. Somewhere in my adult life, you start losing things, and you're like, why did I lose this? But so like everyone else, was so excited to finally see Obi-Wan and Anakin battle on Lava Planet, which in that scene in the movie is amazing. But then there's a lot of crap in that movie. There's a lot of stuff that's just as bad as everything else in like Anakin's motivations, Anakin's acting, Anakin's dialogue, all horrible. Padme dying from a broken heart. Vader screaming no, just in the theater. I was like, you failed at this one too, George. You screwed it up. Ryan O'Toole asks, who is your favorite actor working today? As I've said many times, I don't really like picking favorites. I really like Chris Pratt, not necessarily as a best actor. It's more kind of those ones where sometimes their personality just makes you like them. And if you follow him on social media, if you've seen any interviews with him, it's hard to not like Chris Pratt unless you're like some crazy magazine that has an agenda. Like for the last 2 weeks, some people tried to like trash Chris Pratt because in an interview he said, I don't feel like there's a lot of blue collar type stories that represent, my background and that kind of connect with me. And so people trashed him like, what? People tell stories like this all the time. What are you talking about? And I read it and I was like, yeah, there's a lot of stories that are supposedly blue-collar, but they feel like blue-collar stories written by someone in Hollywood. But they're not movies that actually reflect the world that I've lived in as a guy in Texas that's on the conservative side of things, evangelical Christian, that you see Christians in movies, you don't see stories that reflect the life I feel that I've lived, because they're written by people in California that are not Christians, that do not share the worldview of people in Texas in conservative type circles. But so Chris Pratt makes, I don't know, that was a long rabbit trail. Chris Pratt makes this statement, got trashed, but even the statement just felt like a very normal, real statement for someone to make. He hangs out with his wife, they post videos of themselves just goofing off and stuff, and just really enjoyable people. And I find him very pleasant on screen. I watched Parks and Rec, going way back, and so I knew him as Andy Dwyer on Parks and Rec, and the first season didn't like him, and then after that they kind of changed the characters and made him more dopey, likable guy as opposed to just horrible boyfriend guy, and just loved him on there. He started getting roles in like Moneyball, I think, and then Zero Dark 30, and it's like, really? They're giving this guy some roles like that? And then they announced that he's cast as Star-Lord. I was like, wow, this is really cool. He's getting this role, and then just kind of killed it. Vincent Adultman asked, have you seen movie 43? No. And even like Vincent Adultman said in the discussion, he said that Passengers even was likable because of Chris Pratt, and I would agree with that. I mean, Passengers is an interesting movie because it's like 4 movies. It's like they couldn't decide which plot lines they wanted to go with. There's like 4 different stories, and 2 of them can go together and 2 other ones could go together. The 4 they went with don't really go all that well together, but either these 2 or these 2 would go to. I was actually talking with my guys, Cody, Tyler, Jeff, and Durbin about this a day or 2 ago. But anyway, so I'm rambling on a little bit there. Do you think The Last Jedi will be the best Star Wars movie over Empire? Nope, no chance. The part of the problem is that Empire Strikes Back is both a special movie, is a very special movie, and at the same time, it's a special place in our heart. It's like part of your experience growing up. It's a fresh experience, and you just can't really recapture that. You can't get that a second time, and so those are some of the issues that it had some. As good as it might be, it won't capture that magic that is The Empire Strikes Back or Star Wars: A New Hope. So I don't think so, even though I think it'll be very good. In the comment section, someone said that Hell or High Water captures Texas pretty well. That's true. That's one. And even that, it captures a part of Texas. It doesn't capture. And likewise, so like the show Friday Night Lights, it was literally filmed where I live. I can point, like if you've seen the show Friday Night Lights, I could drive you around in a tour, in about a 2-hour tour, and I could show you about 10 different places from the show. And like, there's the park, or there's the car dealership, there's the football stadium, there's the water tower. I could point you to all those things, like from the pilot episode. They're all right around where I live. And it captures a lot of Texas. It doesn't capture everything about it. But for the most part, there's very much a worldview that comes from the coasts that's more infused into stories than capturing the feel of, what kind of actually makes up a very large percentage of the population of the country. Rhino 2 also asked, if you could erase one movie from existence, what would it be? Alien 3, for the reasons I gave before. I hate the mythology of it. I hate where it went. What it did, I would just erase it. Actually, I've got Cody the Leech asked me to propose my own sequel to Aliens. I've written up a trilogy, maybe a quadrilogy of sequels to Aliens that would be my own version that would, in fact, erase Aliens from existence. Hey, David O'Sullivan, nice to see you again. It's been like a whole 30 minutes since we last spoke. But so that's what I would erase, and I think I'm going to have a video coming up where I propose my sequel to Aliens, and you will see my Aliens universe that is going to be very exciting. It's a bit of a shared universe, actually. Gamer asks, do you think Alien Covenant will be any good or better than the other recent Alien movies? I believe it will be good. I believe it will be better than all of the other Alien movies since Aliens, and I think it will be nowhere good as Alien or Aliens. I expect it to be something that I'll give like a 7 or a 7.5 is what I'm anticipating. So good, not great. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I think it'll be a well-crafted, enjoyable horror type movie that is just kind of more of something we've seen before. I don't think it'll have anything particularly special about it, is kind of what I'm anticipating. And that's fine. It's good. It's okay. Every movie doesn't have to be the greatest thing ever. But at the same time, it's kind of feel on it. Someone had just asked, am I excited about the Blade Runner reboot? Kind of. I'm not a big Blade Runner guy. I need to rewatch it. I've only seen it 1 or 2 times, all of those a long time ago, so I really need to rewatch it. Actually, the Nathan Albers guy that asked a couple questions earlier, he's supposed to watch it with me, and we'll do a review whenever he gets back from college, so that'll probably happen, unless he's afraid of my channel now, because I have a lot more subscribers since he last did a video with me. So I'll probably review Blade Runner beginning of June or so. Actually, I might do it. I might do it closer to when that other one comes out. But so I can't be too excited about it because I'm just not a big Blade Runner guy, but I'm not excited about it. So if you have any final questions, if you want to throw them in there, I've only got one more on my list. Henry Tweet asks, what movie makes you laugh the most fun movies of yours? The ones that probably make me laugh the most these days that I actually kind of watch on repeat would be like Guardians of the Galaxy or some of the other Marvel movies that are Marvel movies with a lot of humor infused into them. I don't rewatch a lot of comedies in my free time terribly often. And if I'm going to rewatch a comedy, it's not going to be a movie. It's going to be seasons 1 through 4 of The Office. The Game Crew asks, do you have a favorite Quentin Tarantino film? Pulp Fiction. It's a really special, neat film that just loved what he did with that, and just something really fresh. Rich Reviews asked what I think about the Vince Mahoney biopic. Great idea for a biopic. Great idea for biopic. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there in the world of professional wrestling. Like, I'm not a big professional wrestling guy, but I appreciate it enough, and so biopic about him works nicely. I think someone just asked what movie made you furious. Alien 3. That's what I'm going to keep going back to. Alien 3. I really don't like Alien 3, and especially like it very much so is everything just happens that first 5 minutes. Gamer Crew just threw another question in there asking about Alien Covenant. I don't know if there's a long delay or if he missed it, but I did answer the question about Alien Covenant, where I think it will be good. I don't think it'll be great. It will be better than the more recent ones. It'll be nowhere near as good as Alien and Aliens. So anyway, I'll hold on and sit here awkwardly for a few more seconds to see if any questions come in. Like I said, I think there's a minute-long delay. Oh, Rich Reviews asks, if you could run a studio, what would it be? I'd get into that Disney business. Vincent Adultman asks, would you rather fight Jack Bauer or Worf? Either one is going to kill me. Jack Bauer would choke me out or bite my throat out of my throat. Whereas Worf would slice me to pieces with his back luff. And so I think that's a little bit cooler. So there we go. I'm going to go with Worf on this one. Any other final questions? Like I said, I think there might be a delay or something because the Gamer Crew has asked me multiple times the same questions that I've already answered. Oh, turn with quick thoughts on Mad Max Fury Road. I really enjoyed it. My wife won't let me show the kids. Apparently you shouldn't show 2-year-old violent rated R movies where people get chopped up and pregnant women get run over by trucks. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I grew up on the original Mad Max movies and absolutely loved the first 2. Not a big Thunderdome fan, but the first 2 really loved them. And Fury Road is a great continuation and a neat continuation because it's an example of seeing the things I loved about the Road Warrior, except with modern technology and special effects and what you can do now. Whether that be the special effects or whether that be just the visuals and the color correction. So it's just kind of it's a really good, really gorgeous type of film. So it's a really neat one. Best movie directed by Mel Gibson, Braveheart. Just yesterday, I guess they announced that they announced a day or two ago that some directors are doing their own kind of take on the Braveheart story, except about Robert the Bruce, as opposed to William Wallace. I'm just blanking on who it was, but so I was thinking about Braveheart, and I was like, even though I like these directors, I'm not crazy about these people doing this, because Braveheart just kind of touched on some of that stuff so well, and it's just a really great movie with great characters, great action. Everything on that movie fires, and it hits so many different emotions in different ways that I think Braveheart's just a really special film. And I don't think he'll ever top it. And that's not a statement of that's a statement of how good that movie is. And in particular, it came out when I was in middle school, so it's also like one of those first rated R movies I saw in the theater. And the first time I saw like an adult drama in the theater, I was like, I love this movie. This is amazing, because that's how I talked when I was in middle school. So it'll always have a special place in my heart. And so I don't think that you could ever top it for that reason. But yeah, Braveheart probably by far. All right, I'll take one more question if one comes in. Or I'll sit here awkwardly and then I'll just click the finish button. Vincent Adultman asks, do I like The Rock or Face Off more? I would have to go Rock or Face Off more. I'd have to go with Face Off, actually, because I'm a big John Woo fan. And so just love that movie. Then beyond that, you get crazy Nicolas Cage and John Travolta. Just the whole concept of them playing each other, it worked really well. Loved that so much, the way it worked. But beyond that, so Nicolas Cage did 3 action movies kind of back to back. He won an Oscar, and then he went, all right, now I'm doing action movies for the next 2 years. And so he did The Rock, Con Air, and Face Off. And actually, The Rock is my least favorite of those. So it's kind of one of those ones that there's no particular reason that I would say that it's not bad. It just, for whatever reason, The Rock didn't resonate with me as much as those other ones. And Con Air is one of those ones that I went and saw with my mom in high school. It just had a special place in my heart that I've always really liked Con Air a lot. Likewise with Face Off. So anyway, if I had to throw some thoughts on that, Rich Movies just asked about if I liked. Why is The Rock the only wrestler that's ever made it into acting successfully? Because he's the only one that's been good at it. There's just somebody comes along every once in a while that just has a special something to them, a charisma to them, a certain charm that people like to see them on screen doing stuff. So Arnold Schwarzenegger was that for bodybuilding. It's like, why didn't any other bodybuilders have the type of success that he had? Well, because they're not Arnold Schwarzenegger. Why is The Rock the only wrestler that's had this type of success? Because The Rock is The Rock. And there's just something about The Rock that you watch him on screen and you're just captivated by seeing him on screen. And not incredible thespians, but they're people that are very entertaining. They do what they're supposed to do. And I think they're both people that know they know their audience really well. They know themselves really well, and they can play to their strengths. They're both very smart businessmen that made choices that built up careers. And so like The Rock, they first kind of identified him as the replacement for Schwarzenegger back when The Rundown came out. There's actually a scene in The Rundown right as Arnold was about to become the Governor, and he's in The Rundown, and he says like to The Rock in a nightclub, "Now it's your turn, buddy." And then they make that movie, and it was okay. It did okay. And then he did a bunch of kid movies, and there was like 8 years there where he didn't become like this big, gigantic movie star that rivaled Schwarzenegger at all. So it was like, okay, I guess he's a bust. Now you look back over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and certainly you would say that The Rock is absolutely this generation's Arnold Schwarzenegger with similar types of blockbuster mega success. There's reasons that they say he's box office Viagra for franchises because he is, and people love seeing him in movies. But both, like, he built a career, he built a name for himself, and then at the right time he discovered what was good for him, and he's just been rocking it for the last several years and has made very good decisions for several years now. And that's similarly what Schwarzenegger did for a very long time. So that's kind of why. I think my wife in there asked in the comment section, did Mel Gibson direct the movie that we saw with him in recently, referring to Bloodfather. No, he did not direct Bloodfather. He only acted in Bloodfather. All right. That puts me at 45 minutes. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Thank you guys for subscribing, helping me get to 1,000 subscribers. These live deals are fun. I've done a lot of them this week because I've done these Q&As, but I'm experimenting with a lot of different stuff right now because I can do some different stuff. I've also been busy last week, so I couldn't do videos where I was editing because I was working on a big project. So that's also why I've done probably more of these live videos than I might have otherwise, but it's fun getting to interact with people. My nose is about to start running everywhere. Animation Trainer says, as soon as I enter the stream, it ends. Sorry, man. I didn't mean to, the way that worked out. If you have a question for me real quick, I can answer it. If I'll hold on if you got something for me. But yeah, sorry. I've been going for a while. I was actually going to head off to the movies. I think I'm going to go see The Circle. If Slight was playing closer, I would have gone to go see that one, but it's not. So, Gamer Crew asks, will there be a part 3? Nope. I'll do more of these. I'll do a Q&A when I hit 1,000, but I'm not going to do another part 3 of hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm going to, the next few days, I think I'm going to put out a video, kind of my tips on doing a movie punditry reviews type channel and kind of how I got to 1,000 subscribers. I'm going to put out a video talking about, my proposal for Aliens, but then when I hit 1,000 or 1,100, I'll probably do another Q&A then. So, and I'm a third of the way there already, so it'll only be a couple weeks. And I might do a weekly live feed with Vincent Adultman. Just to ask, I might start doing this on Saturdays, Sundays again, just because I used to do a live show and then streaming it from my laptop I was very unhappy with the quality of it. So I found my phone has better quality. Now that's the problem of I don't have a stand for it. I think I can find one, but I've been holding this the whole time. So my arm, it might appear that in future videos, my right arm becomes very muscular and gigantic from shooting all these videos where I have to hold this for 45 minutes straight. I keep leaning and trying to find a place to put my arm, but, so anyway, I don't remember what I was saying. Animation Trainer, did you have a question for me? All right, then I guess Gamer Crew, Rich Reviews, Vincent Adultman, Egg McMuffin, Trainer Animation, even though you were late. Thank you guys all so much for watching, chiming in with you. I'm sure I missed someone in there. Henry Tweet was in there for a little bit. David O'Sullivan chimed in for a little bit. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I really do enjoy talking movies, having some back and forth. But with that, I need to go blow my nose before this video gets really, really gross. Thank you for watching.